So hello everyone. First off, this is my first time talking in an audience this size, so if I look like a deer in headlights, bear with me. So I want to start off with just a little bit about myself. So my name is Paul Maxwell. I'm a cybersecurity engineer at Poundland. My primary focus is security operations, vulnerability management using Qualysed, threat detection, and cloud security in Azure. Some of the things I've done recently at Poundland is implement a SIEM Sentinel with our online presence. Rolled out KnowBe4, phishing simulation, for TDR, Enter ID PIM, and Darktrace. So, most of you have probably heard about Poundland, but a few of you haven't. Poundland was founded in Burn-on-Trent in 1990. I'm going to give my age away here, but I remember going to that store as a 4-year-old and begging my parents for some toys there. Basically, from the early days, it's your rapid growth over the early 2000s and into the late 2010s. It came part of the Pepco Group in 2019. You may not also know we have a sister brand called Deals, and it's the same premise as Poundland. It operates in Ireland, and its premises sells product for €1.50. That was a success, and then we decided to roll out into Poland in 2018. Today, both brands operate about 1,300 stores, and the premise of the company is to offer amazing value every day. So, what do we mean by Qualysed? So, Qualysed is a word in the Poundland Urban Dictionary, and I'm just going to go and show you these examples. So, Qualysed is basically the negative perception of the platform when we first rolled it out. These images here are from my service and app support teams, pretty much taking the piss out of me because we had another problem with Qualysed. Anyone, by the way, who says AI is going to take our jobs, look at the spelling mistakes there. So, the phrase Qualysed is just a negative perception of the platform in the early days. We had various things like, oh, yeah, sorry, your machine's a bit, it's got a reboot screen, it's Qualysed. That's a very polite version of what I've heard from my IT teams. This happens all the time. Oh, I can't join the meeting. I've been Qualysed. You'll have to bear with me. How long have you been on that screen for? Is it Qualysed? We had it recently where machines are rebooted, and I'm basically straight away jumping on it, going, no, that wasn't Qualysed because it's not in the patch window, so please don't complain at me. And I've got another laptop. I need to do some work. I'm being Qualysed. It's been an hour now. So why do we pick Qualysed? So what we were using at the time was SCCM 2012 for our patching. Anyone who used that platform, it's very manual. So you have to manually set the patches, you have to then get them to your distribution points and then roll them out. We found that our distribution points sometimes worked, sometimes didn't, so what should have been a nice simple job, we'd spend more time trying to get the distribution points up and running again. Needing to be on VPN or on the corporate network was a bit of a pain because during around this time, COVID happened, so we had to go from being on-premise to on VPN, and our VPN at the time was designed for 200 people, not 800, so not everyone was on the VPN at the same time, so trying to do patching became very difficult. Third-party software didn't always usually work very well, or it was a lot of manual remediation, and this led to pretty much patching breaking down in the end of 2021 and 2022. We gave up. So when Poundland was initially got Qualysed, it was the black sheep of the department because no one really wanted to own it. So it first went to our server teams who started doing server patching and getting the servers up to date on there, doing their assets on there. Then it was passed to the app support AUC team at the time, and they started doing their little bits. But it was all very disjointed and all very, it didn't make sense. So when I joined the cybersecurity team in mid-2022, my boss, Jeremy, who's at the front row, basically went, here, have Qualysed. And bearing in mind, I'd only just joined the team, and I hadn't really heard of Qualysed before, so it was gone a bit of a deer in headlight moment for me because I'm like, okay, what do I do here? But very quickly, it became clear to me that the platform was not in a good state, and I needed to start again. We had assets duplicated 3 or 4 times, and it was just, I spent weeks and weeks trying to get the system up to date. In the end, I basically just then, with the help of my TAM at the time, initiated a platform reset to basically get it back into best practice. Because other people have said today that your data and your assets have to be correct. And I 100% agree with that, because that's what I found here. So once we got up and running, we were able to then start with our EUC patching. So we set up EUC patching for the devices based off Qualysed Zero Touch. And we started initially with the daily patching, which is your low-hanging fruit, so your browsers, your pzips, WinRARs, things that you can patch during the day and no user will notice. Up until the job was decommissioned later on, no one actually noticed any problems with this job. We then implemented a weekly job because we noticed in doing the daily patching, there were some app patches that wouldn't apply until a reboot. And I couldn't really leave them for a month. So I initiated on a Tuesday a reboot if it needed it. And then finally, the monthly patch, the high-risk one. And from my experience, it was high risk. What we did there was we did a test patch 8 days after Patch Tuesday. You might ask why 8 days? We all know that a patch gets released a day later. Someone goes, oh, well, I didn't do proper QA and that causes problems, and they'll remove it. So I'll wait 8 days to try and clear up as much of that as I can. Our test group is about, I think it's about 40, 45 devices. We leave it a week for patching, and then we ask for feedback and then move on to the pilot group, which is 15 days after Patch Tuesday. That was a slightly larger patch group at about 70 users. Again, the same premise, we'd contact them, any issues, anything we should be aware of. And then if there weren't any issues, we would then go straight into our live patch 22 days after Patch Tuesday. However, as someone said, no plan ever survives battle with the enemy. And we started to see issues arising, which started the Qualysed phrase. And this was legacy OS and software. We were in the process of upgrading to Windows 11, but primarily our OS were Windows 10 and BitLocker. What we noticed on very early is the BitLocker, when a patch had gone wrong, would kick in again and the machine would become unresponsive. So as an action, what we did is we did a pre-action that disabled BitLocker, did the patching, and then there's another pre-action, turn it back on again. Devices and variances in device setup. This one, to this day, still causes me problems. What this is our service desk teams basically, for the, fixing an issue for the user. So they're trying to help the user for the right reason, but it's causing unintended effects down the line. So instead of having one device type across our estate for laptops, for example, we'd have slight different variations across the estate and across the department, so that what we thought would be a nice, easy patching run wasn't, because one or two people would have a problem with their machines, and we'd have to spend more time on that. Even though with the Qualysed platform, we'd inform users you're in a test or a pilot group and basically to contact us to give us any problems, they never did. So back then, we used the golden rule, if silence is golden. If you're not going to talk to us and tell us there's a problem, there isn't one, because users are very noisy. If there's a problem, they should be telling us. Process failures were triaged. So when users were reporting problems, the service desks were not following the process we set. So myself and my colleagues in the app support team would get tickets that said, I've got a problem with Qualysed. And it's like, okay, I'm not psychic. What problem, what issue you're having? So we had to work on triaging with the service teams to actually get some meaningful information that we can then share with Qualysed to get any issues resolved. And also, this is one of the key themes that I've heard today from various of the talks, is we didn't have good business process knowledge and usage of some of our applications. We thought that it was not used during that time frame. We'd go to patch it, and then we'd have the team screaming at us that, what have you done? You just caused my application to go down. But there was no set documentation on this is what it did and this is when it's used. Clashes with previous patch jobs. So this one was the daily and weekly. So in my naivety, because I was new to the platform, I didn't realize that doing the daily and the weekly, that they would clash. I thought that that it would work a bit different. And this one, so instead of, again, people talking today about you really need to focus on where your risk is. I was applying security, non-security, and feature updates all in one job, and that was then causing me problems where there was a feature update that we didn't test properly, and then it would cause an unintended effect on the machine, and then problems arose. So what issues did this cause us? The main one that we got was we'd get that lovely Windows 11, oops, something went wrong, undoing. And initially that would take anywhere from 2 to 8 hours to correct itself. And it was the service desk would literally just put the machine to one side, let it correct itself, give the user a new machine, and and wait for it to fix, because if we tried to break it out and try to get out of that screen, this one came up. Then it went into endless reboots, and it was unusable. You may think this one's a joke, but it's not. One of our users actually went, "You've cracked my camera from Qualysed patching." How a hardware issue can be caused by a software problem, beyond me, but they were adamant. And device slow after patching. So this one was the age of our laptop. So the Qualysed Tech Debt report has been brilliant for us recently, because we've been able to start isolating our devices at device age and start to get the older machines out of the environment. And then this one happened with just one user, but it had to be the lead of our app support software dev team, that he would lock his machine at night, not shut it down or hibernate it, come back in the morning, and he's lost everything because Qualysed has decided to do correctly. It's tried to prompt him, he's not been there, and he's just decided to go with the patching overnight, and he's lost work. So from the feedback, and then working with Qualysed quite closely on this, we started making some changes. So the first one, we got rid of BitLocker pin, so we used the Qualysed platform to identify any devices that could use a TPM. We could use TPM on. We transitioned them over. Any machine that we couldn't use TPM on was retired. Moving users to new devices, so anyone that was on one Windows 10 build, especially the pin, we put them onto a Windows 11 build where possible. Because I'm sure you're aware, in your own environments, there are certain applications that you can't update, or they won't let you update. But it's a very small number of users we can't do that on. Everyone else is actually happy to go to a newer build. Like I said, we added more pre- and post actions to the monthly patch job with regards to BitLocker pin, so we just shut it off, did the patching, and then let it turn on afterwards. But we put some logic in there that if the patch went wrong or it couldn't work, it would be, I think, 10 hours or 5 reboots. It would kick in after that. This is one that I found in one late night going through the platform having a look. There was an option that it will only do patching when the user is signed in. So I turned that on because then that stopped that issue with my lead of the software dev team getting his machine rebooted out of hours. We also decided to implement a pre-test cycle. So we'd get 4 machines, 2 Windows 10, 2 Windows 11, that had pretty much most of the applications on there that we would need to try and identify any issues before we went to a live user. That one is an interesting one. We do try and use it, but the service dev kept pinching our laptops. So now we've had to use laptops and devices that are end of life, won't be reused, and then we're doing that. We changed our job query. So initially we used an app family query to basically target what we wanted to patch. We changed that to VMDR prioritization, and that enabled me to reduce the amount of patches I needed to send to the user devices by 70%. That in itself had a huge impact on our machines. So instead of it doing anywhere up to 120 patches a month, it's now doing, I think this month is scheduled to do about 50 to 55. And I removed one of the daily patch jobs to allow, I think someone's made a slight booby there. We removed the daily job to allow the monthly and weekly patches to run interrupted. So the last two will show you in some detail what I mean by that. So this is the query I run for my monthly patches. Now, it looks a bit much. Basically, it's the inverse of my daily and weekly jobs. So that's what I do in my daily and weekly jobs of I'm going to patch the low-hanging fruit. So initially, we thought, let's just do the reverse of that, saying, let's patch everything that's not that. So then that led to issues of non-security patches, feature updates, things that really you didn't need to worry about because they shouldn't be patched as part of a security patching job. So I then changed it to this. So what we're using here is we're using VMDR's prioritizations, RTIs, to basically go, does this vulnerability or risk have a malware? Is it been seen as a malware, or is it seen being used in active attacks, exploit kit, things like that? So focusing on the ones that are going to cause us problems if we don't patch them. But what I did underneath was anything that I couldn't patch. So we have an ongoing problem with Adobe Acrobat and Reader where it's an older version of the application. Some machines can update to Creative Cloud, others just don't. So instead of having that patch month after month, week after week, coming up going failed, 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 We've put it on a risk register to say, we're aware of this, I don't want to patch it, let's just replace it. And last month we had a little problem with 365 enterprise channels, so that was taken out for the time being, and that's why it's in there. But then also what we're doing as well is, again, just anything that's in a daily or weekly job, I don't want in a monthly because we'll catch it in the other two jobs. This next one, one day I was trying to figure out what does my patching schedule look like over the month, because you have to look in the platform, you go in and out windows, it's a bit hard to see. So I implemented this. I showed it Aaron when he came over, so it was brilliant. So this shows you what our patching looked like before we made any changes. So quite clearly straight away, you can see the problem there. What I was thinking when I set up these patching jobs, I don't know. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. So you can see that at worst, 3 jobs are trying to fire it down at once. Now, in my head, I thought there'd be some logic there of, the reds would go first because they're more higher priority ones, but Qualysed doesn't give you that functionality. So you'd find that the pre-test or the test cycle would be waiting because there was a weekly patch being applied or there was a daily patch being applied. So it just caused a lot of noise. So then being able to see that, I then changed the patching jobs to look like this, much cleaner. So the dailies are gone because so long as I'm patching a low-risk vulnerability within a week, I'm happy with that. But then I also shortened the patch job. So instead of the weekly taking a few days, it ran in 24 hours. And also I left it so that the monthly jobs had enough time to run. So that was, since we've done that, it did take a few weeks for it to kick in, for old jobs to finally basically go, I'm not going to patch, and cancel. Now we're finding that, our compliance rates were about high 70s. Now they're high 80% completion rate. So with all this, how has it changed our vulnerabilities? So when we first had the platform in 2022, we had on average 112 vulnerabilities per device. In 2023, it went up to 145 because we started doing proper onboarding of all of our assets. So we started pulling more assets that weren't done initially. And then in 2024, the patching cycles began in earnest. You can see that they went down to 52. Now they're at 48. So when we first started looking at this, there were almost at 170. So you can see that we have had a very good reduction in our vulnerabilities. Server estate, when we first started, there was 49 vulnerabilities per server. I didn't believe that, so when I looked into it, I was right. 2023, I got more servers in the environment, and then I managed to get even more in the environment. And I also got our older 2020, 2016, 2012, 2008 servers in there. So that's why it went through the roof. Using that data and using those metrics, we've been able to work with my server third party and my environment manager to basically start decommissioning the 2008 servers, 2012 servers, and getting a plan to get those gone. Because we made the decision that we could try and spend time and effort patching these, or we could just modernize. So that's just a quick view of how it looks now. So, being green on laptop vulnerabilities is amazing. And we're actually seeing now that some laptops don't need any patching for weekly, monthly or weekly, which is quite surprising. When I started looking into it, I thought it was an error, but then I looked into it and it's actually true. So with all that, what does Qualysed mean now to my users? So it's now started to change into a positive, so I'll start getting things like this. It's only taken me 15 minutes this month. Usually I expect it to take an hour. It's much quicker. This one I get a lot. People are going, oh, I've got to go do some work now. I was hoping to go out to lunch for a couple of hours, and now I've actually going to have to do some work. The main one, I didn't notice any issues. So, it has changed into a positive. However, people still complain because, it's a journey. It's going to take me time to get it into a better place. As I keep telling people, patching will never be 100% successful. It will never be 100% without any issues. But doing this work we've done with the app support teams and Qualysed, we've reduced it down more and more each month. I mean, we still do have issues. A lovely Microsoft KB last month caused us a problem. But in the patch job, we've excluded it this month temporarily until Microsoft fix their issue. So now I'm going to move on to Patch Mitigate. Aaron talked about it on the last one. We got given this a few months ago, but we haven't quite been able to use it yet. But we'd like to use it on our UC devices to start going after the things you can't patch. servers, again, our server estate should be, in theory, nice and standard. So we can do the things like, guest accounts, null sessions, things like that are really easy to do. But where it really comes into its own is our self-checkout environment. So Poundland's just rolled out 1,600 next-generation self-checkouts into our environment. And this time around, we are putting these into Qualysed to, one, patch them, and two, use Mitigate to lock them down, because each checkout is the same. There's slight variations if they're card or cash and card, but in a sense, they're all the same, so the risk should be lower. And our store backup is PC. So this is a Poundland term, so basically it's a machine we have in each store that the store manager would use, but it also does auxiliary functions to sync the tills and the SCOs to back-end systems. These, again, are standard, so we want to use that there to help us manage risk and manage things. Sometimes you can't patch because we're using an older version of Java, things like that, so we want to use Mitigate functionality to help us there. But myself and the colleagues in the app support team, we did look through this in detail, and we do have some concerns with the functionality. And Aaron's probably going to kick me after for this. Firstly, mitigation jobs bundle into one. So my fear is my servers are managed by a third party, and they might not know everything exactly that runs on that server. So here's one. It's an example just to show my concern. As you can see, this one's we can either patch it, but it's a mitigation, but it has 6 things under it, not just one. And my concern is if in there it was a case of turn off service X, and that server in question needed to have service X, I can't do that. There's no way of me basically saying, only do the other 5. You heard me say that I'd love to use in our self-checkout. Currently, Windows 10 IOC LTSC, which our SCOs use, is not currently supported. However, it will be coming soon. This one happened when I started testing on my machine. I would deploy a mitigate job to my machine. It would go prepared, and it would just sit there for hours. And the only way I got it to really work was to reboot the machine, and then it would work. Now, I think that one has to be fixed, because I think it was my machine specifically and a few machines we had, but when we did limited testing on other devices, it has now behaved. So I've gone through here, patching and CSAM, but that's not it. We have other modules and other things we'd like to do with the platform. Bearing in mind, all you've seen here is primarily done by myself and one other colleague in our other team. So anyone that says Qualysed needs a large team to manage, I would say no, but you have to pick and choose your battles where you have to fight, to work on. So next, we'd like to look at VMDR Mobile, because we have a rather large phone estate. And initially, we've had a look at VMDR Mobile, and it offers us better functionality than what we've got, and it's cheaper than the competitor we're using. EASM. This one is one we've kind of got it in, we kind of haven't. I would like to get it working better, but it's just one of those things that I'm reacting to other things I'll never get around to, but it's something we want to work on more. The Cloud Agent Passive Sensor, I don't know if you know much about this, but we've got limited uses at the moment, so it's running on my machine. So when I go into head office, it's very interesting what I find that's not running at Qualysed that should be, and things on the network that shouldn't be. So I want to start rolling that a bit more. And CIS benchmarking. I want to start doing this, and I learned earlier that I can do benchmarking against Chrome and Firefox, which is great. But I want to use this to basically start benchmarking my laptops so that with the service desk starts tweaking the machines, I'm aware of it, and I can go over there and click the rear and say, what are you doing? You need to go to the app support team and get whatever you're doing done properly so that it's included in the build. So with that, that's me done ahead of schedule. So if anyone's got any questions, I'll take them. If not, that's my LinkedIn. If you want to add me and have a further conversation after this, I'm happy to, but if anyone's got any questions. Yep. Mm-hmm. No, I think it was, again, hindsight, we should have done that. What helped was we had a change in TAM, and the TAM was very more knowledgeable on the platform and gave us more support. I mean, we have a twice monthly call with them to go through any issues. So I was bringing a lot of stuff up with him on that. And also just having what we started doing as well is we'd log a preemptive case before each patching cycle with Qualysed. And then anytime any user reported an issue, we would then put it into the job, and then Qualysed would come back to us very quickly on any problems. So yes, in hindsight, we should have done it sooner, but I didn't know the support was there for that. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, I hope that's been enlightening, and thank you for your time.